So welcome everybody to this AustraLYSIS gig. I'm Roger Dean, I run this ensemble, and this is Hazel Smith, text and former violinist and musician. This is Greg White, sound projection and computing. And just coming on is Sandy Evans, saxophones. And there's plenty of information in the program notes if you have those. We sent some, I think. But I'll just tell you a few things as we go along. But the first piece, you'll see what happens. It's multimedia.
I'm not interested in characters so much as voice, she said. Lego, it's a cutting or leg. Light, she said. No, I'm not interested in hands.
I'm not interested in character so much as voice, she said. She was trying to keep character malleable. Like plasticine or Lego, it succumbs to eager hands. He suffered from mood swings, and they said that's his character, as if they needed an excuse. Meanwhile, as the narrative swayed and tottered, characters came and went. They sported different hats, genders, and ethnicities. They wore masks that they sometimes removed. Each unmasking revealed another mask. The unpeeling never expired. A narratological cleansing rite, a robotic stripping down. Outside, poets and novelists were sparring swords and preparing for a verbal duel. As the characters build up the word, they wished they could take meaning down. To be free of those insufferable autocrats, what bliss! Next time we'll be better armed. Sometimes the characters look both ways, enough to stall semantics. There were fierce battles as oncoming words laid their conditions out. It's not nuclear yet, but there are always those trying to crash through languages high and fortified wall.
She was trying to keep plasmid to maladies. She was trying to keep it to malady. Like plasticine or Lego, it succumbs to plasticine malady. Like trying to voice, she said, blanks to eager hands. He said,
As the character on stage thinks ahead, we outmaneuver him, predict his wavering decline. It's going to result in death or divorce, we cry, as if the audience can advise and warn. Flashbacks and flash forwards outsmart the narrative frame. We pretend that the words are still in flux, and the outcome could be easily reversed. Safely seated, we rail at sexism, racism, spectators at a bloody sport. Nobody can plan anything without flirting first with their own autistic thoughts. You turn your head until it is almost off its hook and ready to autonomously spin. But thinking ahead means glancing backwards, sideways too. You live with all the whispers you ignored. They persist like anthills or succumb to dilution in endless imagistic dissolves. Reputation is the shadow. Character is the tree. I'm unsure what Lincoln sought to paint. Quotations have a bell-like resonance that outwits their finely tuned shell. The word tries to backtrack. The character waves its arms. The word stabs back aggressively. The character nonchalantly smiles. The word wipes back a few tears. The character rolls on its back. The word hails another word. The character flexes its joints. The word tries to chase the character down, but it is less bloated, runs faster, and escapes. To think is to stretch and somersault. To think is to kiss and caress. Thinking can be rhythmic and circular, and algorithmic throwing of the dice. Thinking could be crazy prediction, decisions that divide and spawn. Thinking makes very little difference to where the bullets take aim.
The word is arms. Stacks its arms. Its arms. The massively stabs its bird to which
Is there such a thing as character? Is behaviour simply social malaise? Everyone has character traits, the critic droned, both good and bad. But once you start to stereotype, the white squeezes out the coloured. The actor said she loved to pretend that she was someone else. Most of us aspire to be ourselves. In the election campaign, they argue about her character and characteristically ignore his. You imagine a world where words absent themselves or riot as if permanently drunk. Meanwhile, the language police send out the word to mow the refuseniks down. But they will rise again and push forward, knocking over time and space. No character has a final resting place. Nuance kick-starts the dead.
So the next piece is related to the late Morton Feldman, and it's actually a very simple distributional analysis of two of his early piano pieces from the 50s. And if you don't know his music, it's very sparse, laid back, meditative. And this piece is a little bit like that, but we break it up as it goes along. So.
This work's a tribute to the celebrated poet John Ashbery, who's an American, and he died quite recently. It's in 3 parts. It starts with a reading by me of a poem by Ashbery called Street Musicians. Then there's a short piece of music by Roger that includes musical sounds, words, some are taken from the poem that I've just read, and computer-manipulated voices. Then the piece closes with a poem by me that again is a tribute to Ashbery, and it's called Ashes and Berries, and it plays on Ashbery's name. It alludes to the experience of reading Ashbery's poems, which are quite elusive and quite abstract. You keep thinking you've got the thread and then you kind of lose it. That's all part of the experience. And it also refers to a conversation I had with Ashbery when I met him many years ago. Okay, so this is called After John, Remembering American Poet John Ashbery. One died, and the soul was wrenched out of the other in life, who, walking the streets, wrapped in an identity like a coat, sees on and on the same corners, volumetric shadows under trees. Further than anyone was ever called, through increasingly suburban airs and ways, with autumn falling over everything, the plush leaves, the chattels in barrels of an obscure family being evicted into the way it was and is. The other beached glimpses of what the other was up to, revelations at last. So they grew to hate and forget each other. So I cradle this average violin that knows only forgotten show tunes, but argues the possibility of free declamation anchored to a dull refrain. The year turning over on itself in November, with the spaces among the days more literal, the meat more visible on the bone. Our question of a place of origin hangs like smoke, how we picnicked in pine forests, in coves with the water always seeping up, and left our trash, sperm and excrement everywhere, smeared on the landscape to make of us what we could.
Average violin.
Your poem today seems curiously unkempt, as if it needs a shave and a change of clothing. Reading you is a spot of red wine spreading on a white rug and then quickly disappearing. I have never been thrown off a horse, but I can imagine what it would be like. You have to pick yourself up and start riding again before you find that the horse and you can't cooperate. Roots puff up and burst. The unconscious pays its shaky dues. All the time I'm hovering above the boat as the water washes over. There always seem to be 3 ways to think about everything. 3 ways that you can pay a debt or start your life again. Memories fall like ash. Red berries spot the knitted snowflakes. I left my tears in a plastic bag, but I don't remember where I put it. When we spoke, even the simplest words kept melting. But you have dismounted from your surrogate throne, and I have made you mine. We have a little poetic shareware in common, despite the steam of typewriters. An attention span is nothing but a placeholder. The margins lick up the sublime. Don't move. Rough tides will pull you out, then push you back to me.
Thank you. I think the program notes, if you have them, may even not mention the fact that Hazel is a former professor of this university and I'm actually a current staff member. And I thought I might mention it because I come from the Marx Institute, where we have a music and cognition and action group, and a few of my colleagues are in the audience today. We do stuff related to composition and its perception, things like microtonality, post-tonal music, post-metrical music, deep learning in rhythm, lots of different things that could be of interest to some of you folks in the later parts of your academic career if you want to do research. And the next piece is an example of that, where we're using software written by Andy Milne, who's here, as part of a project we have ongoing about rhythm, production and perception. This software you can get if you want on the internet. It's called Chronomorph, where the first letter is an X rather than a CH. And it's very flexible stuff. I have the innards of it in a way that what's available on the internet doesn't presently provide, I don't think, which means I can do 1 or 2 things with it, like make it vary continuously, which is slightly more difficult or have to be done manually in the software version on the web. So we're using Chronomorph in this piece called Babbles, but I'm using it completely algorithmically, another layer of algorithm beyond Chronomorph itself. So, Babbles. Thanks. The next piece is called Remembering Louis Couperin, but actually, some of you may know that the very influential African-American pianist, improviser, composer, text artist, Cecil Taylor died a week ago, and he was a huge influence on me in my early days as a jazz pianist, together with Bill Evans. They're kind of the poles of contemporary jazz piano since the 60s, I'd say, and he was a big influence on Sandy as well. So we're going to dedicate this piece to him and introduce a bit of Cecil as well as Louis. But you will hear a complete rendering of Louis Couperin's Fantasia 7, Prelude Unmeasured Prelude 7, and that's also an example of a piece which has been a subject of a research effort on our part to work out how people, harpsichordists who normally play it, how they organise the rhythm given the unmetered nature of the score. Thank you. The last piece will be short. We should be done before 2. Please, if you've got time, come and have a chat with us afterwards. If you like, discuss anything, ask us about anything. This piece uses 2 patches which are made by an Australian composer called Charles Martin, currently working in Oslo. And they are both apps for the iPad. And it's very much ambient environmental music. And we're going to use them both together to make a gentle arch, together with some added material in the middle, quite distinct from what's in the apps. But this is called Snow Nest. And thanks very much for coming. See you again. Yeah, and there are visuals as well. Thank you very much. Greg White, Sandy Evans, Hazel Smith, Roger Dean. Thank you.